almost all be having to be planned first, right?
Yeah. I mean, there are many things that can be done on the fly, especially if you want to do back of an envelope kind of calculation for, say, let's estimate the order of magnitude of something, and then you just slap together a few quantities, and you end up with something that would at least give you some sense. But
Well, I think plenty of times, plenty of videos wouldn't get into any math. It would just stay conceptual. Um,
it's hard to actually keep that separation if you really want to do. I mean, I know of so many different people who are good explainers who try to avoid the math as much as possible. And in general, if you're able to explain something in simple terms, not only do you understand it, but you're also able to convey the meaning to others. But at the same time, there's always going to be a kind of a level of compromise that you're doing by taking away part of what's crucial, because after all, when you're looking at the
saying to avoid
development.
math. I'm just saying sometimes the questions we deal with are conceptual and purely conceptual and won't go into math. Besides saying things like something is 2 orders of magnitude more than something else, rather
Right.
than calculations.
Yeah, but a great deal of what we call today physics as a kind of a revolution that happened at the time of Newton and Galileo really depended on the fact that now there is a kind of a mathematical way of understanding.
Measurements and calculations based on those measurements. Before that, there weren't even measurements.
Yeah, yeah, and
Or what, 1500s?
I mean, people still made measurements. It's just that that realization that it's possible to actually put things in the form of equations, because if you want to think about the
It
mathematical
was
origin.
measurements combined with equations.
Yeah, true. I mean, Galileo was really a big experimentalist.
I mean, in ancient Egypt, they were doing measurements, right?
They were doing measurements,
Or was
and
that purely geometry?
I mean,
Like, were they
I'm not.
calculating things in ancient?
They were definitely doing calculations. For example, I know for a fact that Pythagoras' theorem, for example, was tabulated and
Right,
understood by the
right.
Egyptians, by the Babylonians.
Okay, good, good,
Nobody.
good. So it is. So why wouldn't we say? Tell me, what's the jump from Pythagorean theorem calculations to what Newton was doing? The scientific revolution. What's the jump there? What's the difference?
Well, first of all, it's not going to be a really a complete break from what happened before. So if you look at the content of what Newton produced in the Principia, for example, you will see so much of it already present in Kepler's work. And so Kepler,
Yeah,
who
but they're the
didn't.
same time period. So like, I mean, they're the
Yeah,
same group.
yeah, true. But when we're looking at a big jump where Newton introduced differential calculus for the first time and used it in order to understand velocity, which if you just look at it from the point of view of, say, the Zeno paradox, where you're trying to move from one location to another, but in order to move from one location to another, you have to cover half the distance, and to cover half the distance, you're going to be covering one quarter you have to cover 1/8, and so on. And so he said, because of the fact that you're adding something that adds it to infinity, there's no motion. What calculus was able to demonstrate was that no, you're actually able to incrementally add an infinitesimal or an infinite set of infinitesimal quantities, and you would end up with something meaningful. And that's basically what Newton
So
did.
that was a misunderstanding of infinity that got fixed with calculus. A better understanding of how infinity works.
To a great extent, yeah. I mean, nobody
And this is to
really.
help explain part of what's the jump from Pythagorean theorem type calculations to
No,
scientific
I
revolution.
just, yeah, I gave an example of how velocity and motion gets defined, and that was one perspective that was used at the time of the Greeks. It's not the only
Yeah,
one, but
Pythagorean theorem calculations, that was a still object no motion happening. You know what I mean? Like, so there's, I wonder if part of, putting time in there is what made it different.
Well,
Because we're predicting with the scientific revolution, we're predicting things happening in around us. The Pythagorean theorem doesn't do that. It like predicts things
yeah,
about a still shape.
yeah, but here's the thing. When we talk about Pythagoras, and we end up with uh, uh, an equation that was actually produced by so many different people, including Euclid, so Pythagoras' theorem, and a few others at the time of the Greeks. That's not the main contribution that's attributed to Pythagoras. Pythagoras is talking about a kind of a theory that persists until today in the form of saying that the universe as a whole is governed in some way by numbers. That's not the same thing as producing a statement that says x squared plus y squared is equal to z squared. This is a statement about geometry. It's a statement also to some extent about numbers, and it does coincide with aspects of the universe. So, for example, if I take that theorem and start applying it to a situation where the geometry is not Euclidean, then the result is not going to be that. It's going to be something that's going to be modified. So it does capture aspects of reality. It doesn't have to include time as such in order for that to be the case. And in fact, in order to measure something like the curvature of space, something like that gets used at large scales in order to check for the curvature. So it does say something about the universe. It's just that when we're talking about the scientific revolution as it happened gradually with so many different accumulation, the realization that you're actually able to present mathematical models of how things, different quantities are related, not things of the same type. We're talking here in Pythagoras' theorem about numbers, how they get related, but we're talking about how to relate, say, the motion of objects to mass and force, like in the case of Newton's laws.
So we're 7 minutes in. We've been babbling about physics. And the topic today is not about that, although maybe it connects to it, because today's topic, and by the way, we've had audience come and go. Right now, there's, according to my reading, it shows 0. Usually we have more people coming. Maybe they find what we're doing boring.
Yeah, well, the moment, yeah, if you're in a party and you just want to stay by yourself, just start talking physics and
Really? Well, it depends who came to the fucking party. I remember going to a get together of my physics professor and his previous physics students across different years. So some of us were meeting, new people, and like everyone was new to me except for one or two, including the professor. And that's a party of a bunch of physicists, and his wife was there, his daughter was there, so there's a couple non-physicists. And we talked about physics like the whole fucking time. Not really the whole time, but it was often. Talking about people's work, and then even non-work stuff, and just interesting. I remember at one point, you know what? Let's get to the point. This is now two times babbling about physics. Today's topic is, if there's no God, does that mean life is meaningless? And if you just listen to the past 9 minutes, I don't know. Does me and Usama, who, by the way, we're atheists and we think there's no God, do we look like life is meaningless? Whatever. You know what I mean? We're excited about these things. Isn't this what's fun? I'm not saying only this. I'm not saying only this, obviously.
Yeah. Well, we could jump directly into the topic by thinking about how meaning contrasts between the model where there is a God, where supposedly the presence of God creates some kind of a meaning. For example, if you look at the Islamic model, you're supposed to be worshiping God, and that's supposed to be what creates meaning for your life. And the meaning itself is just going to be that journey where it starts with your life in this world, which basically in the Quran it's considered to be al hayat dunya, the lower life, or this life that we have, and your purpose is to work for a life that is not there yet, that's supposed to come after life. So uh, if you really look at it, and
The meaning of your earth life is so that you have a better afterlife.
yeah, so in some sense this does make sense. If you want to get a good retirement, you're probably going to work hard during your regular life, during the years before you actually retire, in order to get to rest at that time.
Although you might die before that, and then what was it all for?
Yeah, so that's one of the things. If we're really thinking that this is not the life that's actually worth working for, and that the life is still going to be coming, and it's coming after death, not as a kind of a continuation of what we have, then this means that you're literally considering what we have right now as a kind of a tool that does not have any kind of a value of itself. And that really has some really bad implications that, in my view, present something that's the opposite of what's supposed to be the claim of religion. This means that you're really not having any kind of meaning to anything here, because everything is supposed to be transient, everything is supposed to be a means in order to achieve a different end that is still yet to come. And I think this, in a way, can be considered to be a form of nihilism, even though the religious people would really think it's the other way
I
around.
see your point. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're
So,
saying that they're saying, the religion people are saying, our view is nihilist and
yeah,
theirs isn't. And you're saying, no, it's the opposite. Theirs is nihilist and ours isn't.
yeah. Let me
Although
actually
it
bring.
depends on whose atheist view we're talking about, because they're not all the same.
Yeah,
And I'm
definitely.
guessing the religious people too, a lot of them probably have their own view that isn't really shared by the mainstream.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
maybe that isn't very nihilist. And maybe it's also not very much fully connected with the God stuff.
Absolutely.
Page 8 says the book of Ephesians speaks of meaninglessness. Can you tell us what it says a little bit? I guess that's what she's saying here. We're made in the image of God, so we will search for meaning. If I don't know how to say this. If we don't want to believe in God, there is a God hole that he's meant to fill. Yeah, I think humans create the God hole and then fill it with God.
If we want to include science and to understand how science has helped us understand what those ancient people that created this conception of a godlike hole that needs to be filled, it's definitely something that evolved with us through a confluence of many different things. You have the hyperactive detection, the hyperactive agency detection device that we have in ourselves, that you have you hear a rustling in the bushes, you assume that this is a predator. We have this always assuming that this is going to be some kind of a threat that's present. We always assume that any kind of action that we see in our environment, whether it's animate or inanimate, that it has some kind of a purpose or some goal, and therefore we have some kind of an anticipation how to react to it. So yeah, this kind of godlike whole is something that we have carried with us from evolutionary times.
I noticed she used the phrase search for meaning. I'm trying to think of what that means. I don't find myself searching for meaning. Meaning is already there in what I do. I'm not searching for it.
Right. Yeah. So when we look in any kind of situation where there is talk of meaning, you can see that it's possible to be fully immersed in some kind of a creative activity, some kind of work, some kind of you actually see that what you're doing is meaningful, and that's what usually people attach meaning to.
So that's like saying. So it sounds like what you're describing is, or at least what you said reminds me of, somebody who, I guess doesn't. They're in a job they don't necessarily like. They don't enjoy their hobbies or have none or something like that, or they got ones that they don't like. Maybe a lot of it is watching TV, watching YouTube, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they're searching for meaning in the sense that they want to have the job or at least the hobby that they enjoy, and it makes them want to live instead of, well, some of them might be, why am I here? I'd rather be dead.
Yeah, or in that kind of context, which is basically the religious, the typical kind of religious reasoning that comes about in this context, you you're supposed to be already immersed in some kind of an activity, but that activity by itself is not fulfilling, and you want to be part of something that's larger, and
Yeah,
so
and
you
people
end
use
up,
the words like a calling,
yeah,
right? They're not saying necessarily who or what is doing the calling, but sometimes people get more explicit and they say like God is the one doing, like giving you the sign saying, hey, go do this job, go do this work, go do this nonprofit, go do this. You know what I mean?
yeah, so yeah, and the calling can definitely be something that um, creates fulfillment directly from the action. So if you're, for example, let's say that someone who has a kind of a calling to help the poor, and finds fulfillment in that, um, there is a kind of a fork where, is that action by itself fulfilling, or do I want to consider it to be a means to something that's beyond this? Like
I
they would
think,
say,
go
like
ahead.
when you're doing that good, you're not really doing it to the people that you're benefiting, but you're doing it for the sake of God, who might then be part of this cycle in a way that would benefit others. But there's a kind of an abstract thing that
Well,
goes beyond the people that are involved.
I think the more sophisticated people, whether they're atheists or theists, will have the part about, it's a calling. Let's say they wanted to be a nurse. It's a calling. They want to help people. Even if they believe in God or whatever, the inherent help that they're doing and it being the calling and it makes them feel good or whatever, I think that's there as its own end. And maybe there's also on the side, means to an end. I get to go to heaven. But I don't think that's necessarily always primary. You know what I mean? Whether you're atheist or theist.
Yeah, in reality, especially when it comes to helping other humans or being involved in some kind of an activity that benefits other humans, at the end of the day, this is something that evolved with us. We are a social animal. We thrive on being part of a community, and things like altruism, things like helping others. This is something that is embedded within us. At the same time, that we have the opposite exactly embedded within us. So it's a kind of a conflict between different opposing forces. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that we do this for completely biological and sociological reasons. And then on top of it, we start putting additional loads that come from religion, that I'm doing this for the purpose of pleasing God, for having to serve a greater cause that exceeds that simple act.
Well, you know what you're reminding me of is, and I don't know much about other religions, but I know this about Islam. At least I think it's in the Quran. You correct me if I'm wrong. Everything you do, like even your sexual relations with your wife, every act is like worshiping God, or is
Yeah.
worshiping God.
Yeah.
That's really weird, especially for the example I gave.
Yeah, yeah, this is not. I wouldn't necessarily say that this is only in the context of Islam, but in the case of Islam, because of the fact that it's really regulated in the minutest details, not in the Quran itself, but beyond it in the Sunnah and through various hadiths and so on. But yeah, it literally goes into the minutest details. You mentioned, okay, it's going into the sexual relations with your wife, but you talked about it in the abstract. But you actually, if you look at the details, there are details of what you're supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do, what you're supposed to say, not say.
You mean like what, things like foreplay or what?
No, for example, you're supposed to say a certain dua before you start. Um, you're supposed to
before the foreplay, or that's part of the foreplay.
Well, I guess
You
it's
just
become
turn her on. Is that the thing?
well.
Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yeah,
in the Quran, or are you talking about hadith?
No, this is not the Quran.
Where are you getting it from?
Well, this is the Sunnah. If you end up looking at everything, so there is a dua for initiating sexual intercourse. There is a dua for entering the bathroom, exiting the bathroom, entering the car, exiting the car.
Yeah.
So,
and to be clear, just because it's in the Sunnah doesn't mean it's really part of Islam. We can argue about what really constitutes Islam. They have disagreement within Muslims, so it's okay that also an atheist has disagreement with lots of the Muslims.
Well, yeah, but what I'm saying here is that I didn't pick something that's niche. This is
sure.
Yeah, this is
plenty of Muslims claim this stuff is accurate and part of Islam.
Yeah. It doesn't mean that everybody does it, but it's something that everybody would recognize.
Oh, I'm guessing. You know what? Throw a number out. I want you to throw a number out. Your intuitional estimate of what percentage of Islamic law, whether it's in the Quran or all the hadith, all the supposedly authentic ones, what percentage that people do, or what percentage no one does. I'm going to take a guess. It's like the American laws. In the US, there's plenty of laws that are still on the books. They didn't get erased, but nobody follows them.
It's going to depend on the community. So, for example, any kind of community that doesn't really speak Arabic as its first language and has not had an education,
they're missing 90% of it.
Yeah, well, we're talking about most Muslims. Most Muslims do not speak Arabic,
right?
And as a result,
they're
of
really
that,
just doing what their culture says.
Yeah,
whether it's saying it is Islamic or not.
Exactly.
And maybe that's like 5% of what Islam says.
Yeah, if you read Ali Rizvi's book, The Atheist Muslim, so he comes from a Pakistani background, but he does describe the phases of doubt where he started looking at various Quranic verses and getting shocked that they are in the Quran, even though he grew up a Muslim, and taking these verses to elders in the family and showing them that this is in the Quran. They disbelieve that this is actually there until he shows them, and then they start saying, "Oh, the translation must be wrong," and they start saying,
"When is this supposedly happening?"
It's that I'm talking about a book that was published 10 years ago.
Oh, it's very recent. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, Ali Rizvi is still very active. He's I mean, if you haven't heard about him, just Google him. He's a very nice guy. He's an ex-Muslim, and he's an atheist as well.
So I believe the answer is yes. Life is meaningless, whether there's a God or not. I don't think there being a God would make it more meaningful. Maybe it would slightly.
Well, Well, if I want to take the purpose that is usually considered to be the purpose as stated in the Quran,
Okay.
uh, so you look
Just for
why
worshiping Allah.
yeah, why are we here? What are we supposed to do? You go and look and see that the Quran says that God created us, humans and jinns, in order to worship Him. That's it. Well,
Yeah,
the
but when you
question,
combine that with the other thing of everything you do is equivalent to worshiping him, then it's back to everything we do in life.
yeah, but notice here, uh, when you're saying that you're worshiping Him, that would be presenting meaning for Him. But is it actually presenting meaning for you? You're basically a tool here in this whole machinery.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. It is.
yeah, and
You
so
do this to please the system. I'm gonna say system here.
yeah,
Do this to please the system, not to please yourself.
right. Now, for fairness, you have systems like Buddhism where you're supposed to be eventually combining or melting into some kind of a cosmic consciousness, or going into union with something that's greater than yourself. This is a kind of an impulse that many religious people state when they're talking about meaning, and talking about how it connects with God. So it's not something that's specific to Islam, but it's when you look at it from this perspective, you're basically erasing yourself for the glorification or the edification of something else. How is that producing meaning? This is something, maybe this is something that's beyond me and
Well, then you got
my,
to question, what does the system want?
yeah,
Why is it getting us to do this? Well, in the case of Islam, uh, it's things like make everyone Muslim. I don't know. At least make the whole world running by Islamic laws. By the way, does it really talk about really the whole world, or more like just our area?
okay, so uh, in terms of the purpose, I think the original purpose was to ensure that as many people as possible are adherence to what Muhammad wanted them to do, and I'm talking about
Which
practical
is like
issues.
take over the world.
Fighting for his sake, for whatever he wants them to fight for. He did definitely want some kind of an improvement of things, but at the same time, especially towards the end, it was mainly for material gains, or at least material gains played a really huge part in the motivation that were mentioned to people. You either go and take booty from the other people, whether it's material wealth or concubines or whatever,
So,
or you die and then you go and take these things after death. So that's that. But when it comes to the ultimate goal of Islam, this is something that basically developed a life of its own after the death of Muhammad, especially when they started actually going through these conquests and were successful at it. This basically then in the subsequent centuries started to develop as okay, it's now something that has a life of its own. So it's separated from that original historical origin that it had with Muhammad.
but it's still a scheme to indoctrinate people to go fight for Islam. Not much different than the indoctrination that the US does to convince people to go fight for this country. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let me actually put a little nuance to this, because at the beginning, if you look at the economy of Islam and what it actually relied on, it literally only relied on those conquests to provide money. That if you look at
Plunder.
the yeah. So you plunder and bring money that way, because Muhammad and his companions, even though supposedly they were merchants, if you look at
We start a
stories
lot
that
of wars for plunder.
yeah, so
The UN.
that's exactly what how they relied on those resources in order to bring money. And then when the empire became so large and so settled that they actually now have enough inside, and it wasn't practical to keep expanding because they reached their practical limits, they stopped. Not because there was a decision, okay, fighting the others is bad. No, it's because it's now impractical to continue, or we have some resources right now
How
that
many
are
centuries
satisfying
was it going on?
many different centuries beyond Muhammad, because it happened in steps. So
So like it was there, and then it went away, and then it came back.
well, yeah,
Or in different
especially
areas?
when it comes to India and the conquest of India, this is not something that happened in the first wave. It happened in a way where they would go
So
initially,
basically, where they're expanding somewhere.
yeah, so they would go maybe yearly or something like that, do some plundering, take wealth from the people, and then come back. And then it turned out that
And
this is,
slaves too, right?
yeah, of course. And so then it turned out that this is actually very profitable, and it expanded into actual settlement and an annexation of India. But India in particular was something that's relatively more recent than others, and it was especially brutal.
Yeah. When is it going to stop? When is the world going to
Well,
stop doing that?
are we talking about the world or specifically about Islam?
The whole world. When is everyone going to stop?
Well, I don't think this is a system that has a stopping mechanism, except like if you have a system that has some fuel, eventually the fuel itself is going to run out, and that's when the system stops. So some kind of an engine that is keeping the thing going would have to stop, something fundamental. And I don't think right now this is something that's foreseeable in the
So
foreseeable future.
1,000 years, 5,000 years, 10,000 years, a million years, assuming we don't kill ourselves before that. And here's the thing: the things we're doing is killing ourselves. Can we reach to a point? Is it possible? I mean, to to reach to a point where we're not doing this anymore. You're like, no more wars, no more one group of people taking advantage of another group.
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, the thing I was talking about is not really resources and running out of resources necessarily. I was talking about something a little bit more abstract, some kind of a motivation that runs out and prevents people um, uh, uh, from continuing this kind of endeavor. Now, for fairness, if you look at what Steve Pinker has noticed about how deaths, crimes, famine,
I've been
etc.,
going down.
yeah, have been going down, especially in the 20th century, with all the advances that we have in medicine, in agriculture, in economics. Of course, you're not going to feel that, because if you look at the news, people are dying everywhere every day. But if you notice, the news are not going to be actually documenting prosperity. They're going to be looking for the things that stand out negatively. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to sell. So when you're looking at the news, you have to bear in mind that what's being documented here is the thing that's outstanding beyond that kind of stability that has been achieved. I'm not saying that things are perfect,
There's some good
but
signs. Can I tell you a good sign of that we're doing better in something instead of in some ways just getting worse, or whatever the bad is staying bad. If you look at some of the top richest countries homelessness has been getting worse.
Mhm.
And then if you look at, is it Finland? I think it's Finland. They decided to look at it differently. In these other richer countries, I think the attitude is people are homeless because they're lazy or something like that. And the attitude of the Finland people that made this system and basically solved it, they don't have homelessness anymore, basically. They looked at it like people are homeless, and yeah, there's multiple factors, but if you give them a home, that becomes like the base of fixing all the other problems. Where if they don't even have a home, or they have a temporary home, like what happens a lot in these other countries, it's not enough of a foundation for the other problems to get fixed.
Yeah.
This is a pretty good thing. What I hope for in the future is that other countries learn this lesson. Two things about it. One, the attitude, the way, the outlook on, first of all, understanding what the problem is, and then their solution to solving it. And then more countries do it. Things like this, like take one negative effect of having a lot of homelessness. Well, you got more crime. Well, that connects to what we were saying before. People that are like desperately poor are doing some crime.
Yeah.
A type of crime, like we said before. You know what? Let's think of it like this. Imagine Muhammad and his followers were so rich, they never even thought about raiding other, to get wealth, steal wealth from other groups. They're so rich that they weren't even thinking, oh yeah, we need slaves.
I wouldn't necessarily say that if they were rich, they wouldn't be motivated to do that. But I think the motivation that started the whole thing definitely had to do with, in part, because there were other things involved. The fact that they didn't have that wealth, and that they saw that there is wealth elsewhere. That you have these two big empires, the Roman Empire, the Byzantine Empire is crumbling down, and the Persians are also falling apart.
I want to explain that wealth thing in another aspect. I don't want people to think of wealth as just money. Actually, money didn't exist for a long time. Wealth was there before that. I review says, yes, humans have inherited the problem of primate violence. So let's think about how we were before we became humans. If you look at chimps, and they make these little tribes, they have tribes that fight with each other. They have wars.
Yeah.
Like we have wars.
Yeah, they have wars, and they have vendettas that last years. They would go back and forth. They would pick individuals that were involved, and it's definitely something.
So we're not doing something new, is my point. We're doing the same thing our ancestors were doing.
Yeah, but
so I haven't got to my point yet. That's just some context. There was I think it was an anthropologist. I'm not sure exactly which field. It was a woman was asked, what do you think is like the first sign of was it, I might be getting the question wrong even. Was it culture or was it civilization? And maybe those are really the two same thing. I don't know. And her answer was the first sign, like evidence we're talking about, physical evidence, was finding human fossils where a bone healed, where you could tell they didn't just, break an arm and then die. They broke an arm. Other humans took care of them.
Yeah.
And it healed. And we can tell the difference between a broken arm and then the person dying, and a healed arm and the person dying. Well, let's bring in the concept of wealth. Why were humans able to do that? Well, think of another species like horses. A horse breaks its leg. Pretty sure the other horses just run and leave. They can't help them.
They might have some kind. I mean, with elephants, I know that there is some kind of herd activity that they have.
They have a
dying.
limited amount of wealth, and they try to use it to help some of the members.
Yeah,
And us too.
especially, yeah, yeah. But
Look,
let me let me say something also about that history, and I'm not trying to undermine what either you or what Arab View has said, but um, another close relative of us is the bonobo, and the bonobo is far less violent. They solve
chimps?
most. Yeah, so it's a kind of a species that's very on the face of it, they look a little bit like chimps, but they behave very differently. Um, they are a matriarch, not a male-led
Hey,
society.
that's interesting. That goes along with what I've been saying. We should have women leaders, and we won't have wars.
This is not necessarily what I'm saying. I'm just talking about the features of that particular society, and interestingly about how they appease each other. It's usually through sex. So you want to say hello, that you go and have sex with that individual, basically. uh, um, in any
Maybe they
case,
figured it out, dude. Maybe we've been doing it wrong the whole time.
yeah. So the
Oh my
point
God.
here is that
I'm kidding,
we do have,
everybody.
yeah, we do have this and this, and I think in many different ways that initial claim that our primate heritage actually does bring some of that with us, because in many ways our society is very similar to the chimp society than it is to the bonobo. But what I'm saying is that it's not some kind of a monolithic way of looking at the whole thing. There is a kind of a variety to primates.
Yeah, well, I think what it means is any one of us can do any of the things.
Yeah, yeah.
And the other part was, for a species that isn't able to amass some wealth of some form, so that they could spend it on somebody else who needs it, or they're spending for the future. There's save now so you can spend it in the next winter.
Yeah.
There's species that do some of that. I'm guessing they can't do it for like save now for 20 years from now. They don't have the ability to amass wealth that way, but we can. And some of us choose to use it to help the system by helping the individuals that support the system.
Yeah.
Rather than the other method, which is no, somebody has to lose, and the really bad guy says it's gonna be, you're gonna lose, and I'm gonna take stuff from you, steal stuff from you, stuff like that. And then the other direction is, well, somebody has to lose, and I'll just go ahead and let it be me.
Yeah. Let me actually connect this. Let me connect this with the topic that we have, because the idea of talking about meaning and connecting it with God is really crucial when it comes to prosperity. If you look at the typical life of a human being, and I'm not specifically talking about someone who is well off, or someone who is really in a bad situation. I'm talking about, let's take someone who is living an average life. That person is going to have so many different concerns and responsibilities, that the idea of attaching meaning to a connection with a deity, with something that's greater than themselves, is probably not at the top of their priority. They have so many different things going on in their life, that when we're talking about meaning, they're actually extracting meaning and goal directedness from the things that they have in their life. So they wake up in the morning, they have things that they have to do. They have goals that are very well defined. I want to build a house. I want to buy a car, or whatever it is that you want to do. So there is something that doesn't usually go all the way, oh, I want to be part of something that's larger. It's not something that characterizes humans in that sense. Yes, religion is going to play a part in the life of most humans, but that part is actually not through God, but through community. You talk about the meaning, and the meaning that they extract from religion is that sense of belonging, being part of a community, and having rituals together, interacting together, supporting each other, fighting each other sometimes, but it's all through the community. That kind of direct contact that you would have supposedly with God is something that's very rarely happening on everyday basis. You might have someone who is a monk, or someone who spends all their time in a monastery, dedicating their entire time for that. You have someone who might be sick and wanting to be healed, and so they try um, to get in direct contact with the God that they worship. And so you have these kind of relatively
Like the
rare.
prayer dance to get more rain, right?
Yeah. So yeah, which is actually also an Islamic thing.
What?
You didn't
What?
know that this is also in
No,
Islam?
tell us.
that
Tell us.
that's the thing about you people who don't actually grow up in a Muslim society.
You first, I thought you were going to say you people who don't know Arabic very well. So I took two offenses before you finished that sentence.
Right. So the thing is, um, most Arab countries, as you probably know, don't receive as much rain as other places. And that
So
goes also.
is the issue that not enough people are dancing, or they lost the skill to dance,
No.
or they would have had less if they weren't dancing? What's the issue here?
Okay, so it's not a dance, but it's not that far from it. It's a prayer. So when there is no rain, you go. There's a special prayer. You go and collect all the people that are interested in this. So
I bet this particular law or whatever nobody uses, and really almost nobody knows about it. Like, I don't
in
think
Arab
there's
countries,
anyone doing this thing, right?
no,
They're
it's
doing
a
it
very
still today. It's not
yeah,
just like
yeah,
stuff they
yeah.
remember from the past.
It's called Salat al-Istisqa,
Oh my God.
the prayer to ask for rain.
Oh my Allah.
And it's something that gets that gets advertised on the TV. Today we're going to be having Salat Istisqa, and let me add something to it. Let me add something to it. It usually doesn't happen when there is a drought. Today, because there is they can actually predict the weather a little bit in order to ensure that the prayer works. They pick a time when there is a storm coming.
They're fixing the data.
They're fixing the
That's
the
like the
effect.
scientist who gets paid. Hey, we have somebody that came on. Hi, Anam. Is it Anam?
Hey guys.
Hello.
We had you before, right?
Yes, we
Yeah,
have.
yeah.
We only have
We
12
have,
minutes, by the way. We have
yeah,
to stop.
I was going to say that we have 12 minutes actually.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay. Cool. So I didn't mean to cut off the thought.
No, go ahead. I actually forgot what I was talking about.
Okay,
What is
cool.
it? What would you like to talk about?
So I wanted to, because you said, come up and discuss it when you're talking about the Islamic conquests and the raids.
Yeah.
In India too, because I'm an Indian Muslim, so I have a unique attachment to how the subcontinent became Muslim. So, and also just to say, in the chat, I'm Irreview or IRreview. So
Okay.
I always like following your show.
Thank you. And thanks for letting us know.
Yeah. So first of all, I think that the raids during the Prophet's time, that was a normal part of the Bedouin culture. You could almost view it as resource redistribution, like a tribe, like when they just needed food or money, they would just like attack a stronger tribe and then they would have the upper hand.
Which raids are you specifically talking about? I mean, when you think about the raids that happened at the time of Muhammad himself, there are two different types. There's the type where you have something that's happening locally, and that would involve other tribes, whether it's
well, I'm sure they didn't attack friendly tribes, right?
Well, I was basically trying to separate two things, because you have the local stuff where they, like when in the case of Badr and Uhud, where they were directly interacting with the Quraysh, and then you had other things that involved the Byzantines, the Romans, like the Battle of Mu'tah, Tabuk, and things of that sort that went to the northern part of the border. So I would definitely agree with you that there is a kind of a local thing that was happening well before Islam that has nothing to do with Islam at all, like in the case of Badr. Whether it's a kind of a family feud between Muhammad and his family in Quraysh, or it was something in his newly acquired tribe as he went with in Medina. With the Aus and the Khazraj, I'm not talking about that, but I agree with you with there. The stuff that I have issue with is when he starts having interaction with the Byzantines, with the Persians, and then after that, beyond this, when we're talking about India, that's the issue.
Yeah, for sure. And just to agree with you, I remember learning recently. Patricia Crone gives a lecture. The late, she's a scholar of Islam from the 70s, and when the Arabs conquered Persia, they the style of conversion was you enslave the whole population, and then once you convert and the short surahs or something, then you're free. So it's like benevolent, but it also involves like enslaving 10 million people at a time. Which I don't think they teach you this in Sunday school. So I agree. There is if you would just imagine the horror of like enslaving an entire nation. And by the way, that was so thorough. I've taken a few college courses with William Chittick, who's like a scholar of Persian poetry here in the West. So I had to learn about, but the Persian language is completely wiped out. Nobody speaks it for like 400 years. And the only way it comes back is because Ferdowsi writes the Shahnameh, which is like an epic poem, and then it becomes like Middle Persian, which revives the kind of Old Persian, kind of, sort of. So they did a really good job of suppressing the culture, not to mention the religion or whatnot.
Yeah, and that's in a lot of places, including, I'm guessing, within the Saudi Arabian peninsula, right? I mean, they erased languages there. I know they did in Syria.
Yeah, I mean,
you know what I mean? Like the places that you only see Arabic now, there's a lot of stuff that got erased.
Yeah, no, it's almost a joke, right? I recently learned there's such a thing called Lebanese Aramaic, but we have no written record of it. We just know from the place names that this is not Arabic, this is not, Hittite. This has to be Aramaic that was spoken in Lebanon. But like we have zero historical written.
I wonder how many languages Islam erased.
Yeah. Okay, so yeah, no, you're right. It's not a joke. But yeah. Here's the thing. Here's what would be my defense, right? And thank you, by the way, brother Osama, for giving the clarification. There's probably two kinds of raids, right? You don't want to conflate two different things if it's like a different species almost. Or so the idea though is that resource distribution is kind of important. When I see these empires, the specifically, if you look at the Persian Sassanid, right? Zoroastrianism was not even a religion of the people. Like it's a religion of the elites. So they couldn't, it's not like they go in the temple and, so when you knock over this empire, it's almost like, basically it's the merchants and the princes and the scribes, and that's their religion of Zoroastrianism. So the Byzantines also, I feel like Byzantium and Rome just viewed, the Near East, right, which is Syria and Egypt, as their like lucrative thing, because the Roman emperors would go to war, make a lot of money, and come back. Caesar destroyed Gaul, but after that you go east, and so domination of the Near East was basically. It sounds bad when you guys say it, right? But I would just offer I would just offer that and the other empire wrote down the Egyptian Ptolemy, right? Like there were this incestuous like Greek dynasty, Roman dynasty. Like they were Egyptian technically, but they were not. They were a Greek-speaking ruler, so they were not even native Egyptians. So the thing is, though, this is what Islam knocked over, and it was a very like top-heavy kind of empire. And I feel like as a function of history, it kind of redistributes these resources in a good way. That's all.
Well, that still does not justify the move to begin with in order to go to these places, to do any of this. In some places, the Arabs, they were not even considered to be Muslims at the time. They were not adopting that name yet. The Arab conquerors were not necessarily considered as conquerors. Some of the people accepted their presence as a relief, as you're saying, in some sense, but that's not a universal thing. And when I mentioned the situation with India, and I'm by no means I'm a historian. That's not my specialty. What I know about the situation in India was that, given the fact that the Hindu population was neither Jew or Christian or even Zoroastrian, that can be considered to be Ahl Dhimma, Dhimmis, that was an issue.
Right.
And so they did not have that kind of leniency with
nominal
them.
protection, even.
Yeah. And that's the main issue. Now, whether we talk about the legitimacy of the distribution of wealth as a kind of a thing that naturally happened in the ancient world as a normal thing, that's also questionable, because there's also it can be taken up to a point beyond which it's basically just you don't have you don't want to employ the resources that you have, or you don't want to work, and you then the easier way would be to go get your neighbor's stuff. So in any case, regardless of the morality of what was happening in the case of plunder, the Indian population in particular, because of that religious makeup, was problematic. Now, the Zoroastrians were given that kind of protection in the Quran. As Majus, they do have a kind of a
Sabians, and it's the same
well,
sentence.
The Sabians are a little bit weird, because at the time of the Quran there were no Sabians, and there was
really?
a group in Haran that
Mandeans or something.
The Mandeans, they presented themselves. There's a story about I don't know, I forgot which caliph, who was touring the region, and in order for them to absolve themselves from being treated differently, they said, we're the Sabians. I forgot which caliph it was, and when he came back, he said, you either be Muslims or you have some kind of an arrangement for us. So that's basically, as far as I know, this is how they were born as a group. But in any case, we do have some protected groups. Outside of these protected groups, there's a problem, and that's the issue.
You're right. No, you're right. And I would just I'll jump out because I don't. Maybe I'll come back later to talk about the Islamic entrails into India. But I would say the gist of your history is right. It definitely started with the Afghan raids and the treasure. Like, they came back with treasure, and they, like, the Hindu histories at least say they were like piles of skulls of Hindus, because, like you said, they were not afforded any kind of a protection for being monotheists. So,
hey, you mentioned talking about or coming on to talk about something again. Do you know when you're coming? Because, like, if you want to come next week, then I can make the topic like Islamic expansion into India.
Yeah, or in general, right? And Persia is amazing too. Like,
and if
how do you want me to word the title?
But just history of Islamic expansion, maybe.
And if possible, to come a little bit earlier in the
Yes, sir.
broadcast instead of having to go all the way to the end like
Yeah,
this.
you could come
Yeah.
like right in the beginning.
Okay. Yes. But thank you both for having me. It was always nice watching your show.
Okay.
Okay, man. We'll see you next week.
Take care. See you.
Bye. All right. Well, we got 5 seconds left, so I think we should stop here. Everyone, thanks for coming. Next week, we're going to be talking about the history of Islamic expansion into everywhere from where it started, I guess. From the first house or the first mountain. Right? It was in a mountain, right? Where it came and it expanded from there.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that we don't know, but there's also